Hello, lovely friends. This is Samantha Nolan-Smith, the CEO and founder of the School of Visibility. And I'm here today to talk about, uh, to give you a little bit of a breakdown of visibility blocks, because when we're experiencing visibility blocks, we can kind of come at it or come into the experience from different angles. And when we know all of the different components, they're easier to spot. And the easier they are to spot, the easier they are to clear. So let me just take a sip of my beautiful oolong tea. So, visibility blocks. Let's just very quickly say visibility blocks are the fears around being seen or being heard. So, using your voice or being on camera or being visible, taking up space, whether that's in conversation or in meetings or in your home. These are what I broadly categorize as visibility blocks. And there are different ways that you might recognize a visibility block. The first is there's the lived experience of something not working the way you want it to work. So you might want to do public speaking, but you have terrible stage fright. Or you want to write a book, but it's just not happening. Or you listen to all of the list building advice there is out there if you're trying to grow your business online or your influence online at any level, and you're listening to all the advice, and your community is just not growing. It's just not happening for you. So that's the first level you can identify. And the way that you identify, oh, this is connected to visibility as opposed to some other form of block, is there's some sort of connection between what's not happening and people seeing you or hearing from you. So that's the first connector point where you might go, oh, this could be, it's potential that this is a visibility block. The next level is to understand that there's emotion connected to that. So let's say you've been trying to grow your community and it's just not getting anywhere. Then the emotion there might be frustration, or it might be disappointment, or it might be despair, giving up. That's a whole layer in and of itself, which is really fascinating to understand because it tells you about behavior, it tells you about habits, and it tells you about it it gives you so much information about how you go through the world and address challenges and so on and so forth. And there are lots of tools you can use to clear out that level of emotional response in order to feel less triggered by, let's say, the experience of not growing your list. And that in and of itself is very helpful because that helps to start moving things. So that's the second thing. You've got your experience that's not going the way you want it to go. You've got the emotional response to that. And sometimes you'll recognize the emotional response before you'll recognize what it's connected to. The third thing that might happen is then you might come to understand the story that sits underneath this. So let's say you're trying to grow your list, not much is happening, not much movement's there. Once you start to identify some of the stories, dig into some of the stories, what you might find is you've got a series of beliefs that are, if I grow my list, then I will put myself in danger because people will know about me and suddenly I'll get trolls or my privacy will be invaded or there'll be something like that. Or your story might be, if I grow my list, then I won't be able to manage the larger community and there's issues of overwhelm and so on and so forth. Or if I grow my list, people will judge me or criticize me. So that's the next layer, is the layer of story. What's the story that is fueling and affecting the experience that you're having? Once you can identify that story or multiple stories, then you can start to really get toward what's really going on. So what happens often in, let's say, in online marketing advice is the advice really just hits that top layer. It just hits the layer of, I can't grow my list. And then most marketing advice then just takes that at face value, doesn't go, beneath that, and says, well, here, let me give you some more tactics or strategies or so forth, so on and so forth. And sometimes that is enough, because sometimes the reason you can't grow your list is you don't know how. So that is a useful starting point, but it is certainly not the end point. And too many people find themselves jumping from, well, now I'll learn another strategy and another one, because they mistakenly think, oh, it's just the strategy that's the problem, or I just haven't learned enough tactics that is causing the problem. And actually, you've got the emotion, you've got the stories that sit underneath that all are wildly important in terms of influencing your experience of growing your community. And then you have the layer underneath story. And the layer underneath story are the fears of, well, so we talked about the story might be, if I grow my community, then people might judge me, people might criticize me. Underneath that is a fear of getting it wrong, or maybe there's a fear of exposure, fear of judgment, fear of ridicule, fear of not being perfect. There could be a variety of different fears there. And for each person, you'll have your own sort of little set of fears there. And once you can get to that layer underneath the story, the fear that informs the story, then you can start to get to the root cause of what's going on. So let's say the root cause for you is, when you were a child, you grew up in a household with a parent who was very demanding, who was constantly criticizing you, who you could never get it right. Or you sat around the family home and you tried to speak up over dinner and you're always shut down. Or you were bullied at school, or there's so many different experiences you might have. So you've had that experience. Then what happens is you have then developed a story around that, which is, when I speak up, nobody listens, or when I speak up, I'm criticized, or when I speak up, people judge me, or when I speak up, it's dangerous. So you get that's that next layer. And then from there, that then affects what you're really trying to do, whether it's with your business, whether it's promote your work, grow your community, write your book, go out there and do speeches, and finding you've got stage fright, etc., etc. So until you go through those different layers, and again, you might come up at different points depending on how much personal development work you do. You might already be very well aware of some of your deeper fears and some of the root issues, and then it's sort of so you're coming in at that level and then working your way up from there. For others, you'll come in at this level and you'll go, well, I don't know what is causing this, but I know that I have been trying and trying and trying to grow my community, and nothing is working. And so you'll come in from there and then go that way. Either way, you come in at any point. The most important thing to know is that all of these things are intersecting, are influencing one another, and then to know how to clear those out. We're not going to talk about how to clear them out today. Today, it's just understanding how they intersect with one another. But I hope that one of the takeaways from today is recognizing that the issue is not just at the superficial level. It's not just at the level of, if I just take different action, things will change. You have to come into those, the core fears, stories, and beliefs and emotional response to all of that, in order to free yourself, in order to make the change that you want to make. Okay. I'm developing a series at the moment, a podcast series on visibility blocks, what they look like, what the fears are, what are some of the common stories, what the tools are that you need to clear them out, all of that stuff. So if you've been listening to this and you're like, oh, I have a visibility block, or I have something that maybe is a visibility block, please tell me. Let me know in the comments, and I'll be sure to include them in the podcast series so that you then can listen to it and get some real benefit out of it. And finally, because I love to share inspiration from other women who are speaking up, I was just reading this lovely collection of poems the other day. And I always find, and I want to do this more with us in our community, is to share more and more examples of people who are using their voice and using it in lots of many different ways and inspiring ways. Because one of the things I'm certain of is that the more you see other people share their story or use their voice or be visible, the more that it inspires you to speak up and use your voice. So I've got a very short poem from Kate Baer, B-A-E-R, to read to you about women. To take back a life. First, you must learn desire. Hold its fruit in your hands. Unmarry it from the hunger to be held, to be wanted, to be called from the streets like the family dog. You are not a good girl. You are not somebody's otherness. This is not a dress rehearsal before a better kind of life. Pick up your heavy burdens and leave them at the gate. I will hold the door for you. I love this book so much. So poetry is one way to speak up and share your voice and share your perspective. And I've just started also listening to Claire Bowditch's memoir on Audible, which is fantastic. It's already, I'm in the first 10 minutes, it's already had me giggling many, many times. Her memoir is called Your Own Kind of Girl. There's another piece of inspiration for you. If you listen, the clarity in her voice, in her willingness to just show up and be herself is really, really beautiful and really inspirational. Okay, that's it for today. Please let me know in the comments if you are curious, is this a visibility block, or you're thinking, well, I'm feeling lots of this emotion at the moment. Could that be connected to visibility? Or if you're noticing, I've got this story and I don't know what to do about it, is that connected to visibility blocks? Let us know. Let me know what you want to cover in the podcast. It's a series about visibility blocks, how they work, how to clear them. And I will see you again next week.